All right, we'll say good morning. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning's shir. To thank our TALMUD Torah sponsors for the month of Elul Haba Alinu Latova, Baruch Meir Rena Dubin, in honor of our children and all of the suburban sons and daughters beginning their year of study in Eretz Yisroel. May their Torah study and mitzvos in the Holy Land merit the release of our precious hostages, the success of our soldiers, and the return to their families, and the arrival of Moshiach, tzidkeuni, bimheira, b'yameinu. Amen. Our week of learning sponsors: Joshua Malkie, Rosenbloom, Shalom, and Zahava Rosenbloom. Le'ilu nishmas Yisroel Dovid ben Moshe Hershel, the brother of Rabbi Gedalia, and our Daf Yomi sponsor for today, Andrea Lavine, in memory of her paternal grandfather Yisroel ben Lazer Volla, on the occasion of his 23rd Yartzeit. We hope that in the merit of our TALMUD Torah, all of the nishmas and aliyah, the families in Chama. And above with that, let us begin. Today's daf is Ayin Tes 79. We have a lot of incredible Gemara ahead of us to cover. We are picking up in Eretz Hashem on Ayin Chesem Base 78b. We are picking up Amr Shol Bar Nachman. It is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 lines up from the bottom. So let's remember again, yesterday we ended up with a fascinating discussion regarding foals, little dunkelas, right? Little baby donkeys, and how again they're called the siach. Why? Because they go ahead and they follow after Sicha Noah. All you have to do is speak to them nicely, and Baruch Hashem, they immediately follow. So now the Gemara picking up on a little bit of agarit over here. What's the meaning of the pasuk? Al kin yomru hamoshlim. So the Gemara is quoting over here the pasuk in Bamidbar. So the pasuk literally translated is as follows. Let me read it to you. It says, Al kin yomur hamoshlim. Therefore the rulers will say, Ba'u chashbon. They have come to chashbon. Tibana v'sikonin ir sichon. Literally again, build and let it be established the city of Sichon. Remember again, Sichon was one of the mighty Canaanite kings who Moshe Rabbeinu was able to conquer. So listen to how beautiful this is. What's the meaning of the phrase, therefore the rulers will say? So the Gemara says, Hamoshlim, who are the rulers? Elu Hamoshlim bi Yisroel. Wow. They will say, who are the true rulers in life? The true rulers in life. The true rulers in life are the people ultimately, again, who exert control over their desires. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. By the way, if you just take a look at the Rashbam for just a moment, the Rashbam, this is 2, 4, 6, about 8 lines into the wide lines. Pashte dikra mairi shekishenilcham sichon b'melech Moav harishon v'yikach eskol arzo miyad nisnavu bilam mechaver shinatzeach sichon Moav umiu parshi yisera. So just to understand the context is speaking about when Sichon went to war with Moav and conquered the area of Moab. But now the Gemara is darshaning it. My Moshe, who are the true rulers in life? The true rulers in life are those who are able to go ahead and control their desires. So we'll say, so remember again, this is reminiscent of the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. Ezohu Gibar, what is the demonstration? Who is truly strong? Hakovesh es Yisroel. One who is able to rein in, one who is able to subdue his desires, right? The greatest display of strength in life is when I'm able to go ahead and rule my desires and again, not necessarily stamp them out, not necessarily extinguish them, but to rein them in, to keep control over it and not to let them control me. So the Gemara says, that must be from Ba'u Chashbon. So what does it mean, Ba'u Chashbon? Now, literally translated means they came to Chashbon. Chashbon is a place. Ba'u, this is beautiful. Ba'u v'nachshov Chashbon Shalom. Both say sometimes the most important thing in life is to contemplate the greatest calculations of life. What are the calculations of life? Hefsid mitzvah kineged schara, u'schara beira kineged hefseda. To calculate the loss of a mitzvah versus the gain, and the reward or the gain, right? The reward of an avera, right, corresponding to its loss. So we'll say this is a very profound idea. The Gemara acknowledges that every mitzvah has a gain and a loss, right? The gain, of course, is eternal life. The gain is schar olam haba. There's so many beautiful gains. What's the loss of a mitzvah? What's the loss? Again, it could be money. It could be time. It would be foolish to think that there aren't, quote unquote, losses involved in mitzvahs. There are. And it's powerful that the Gemara acknowledges that sometimes it is challenging to perform mitzvahs because mitzvahs come at a tremendous expense. Whether it's material, emotional, whatever it might be. So therefore, the Gemara says, but what's the secret? The secret is to do your cost-benefit analysis. Right? And to recognize, you're right, there is a cost to a mitzvah. There's no shayla. What's the benefit? What's the benefit? And the Gemara says, I can guarantee you that the benefit will always outweigh the cost. Same thing with an Avera. I will say it's incredible. The Gemara says, if you look at these words, the Gemara says, weigh schar Avera keneged seder. You're like thinking, schar Avera? How can you even write a phrase like that? What's the reward for an Avera? Because what's the answer? What's the answer? There's benefit. There's absolutely benefit to sin. What's the raya that there's benefit to sin? What's the raya? We do it every single day, right? You know what I'm saying? Again, if there wasn't benefit, I'm not crazy. Like, I'm not foolish. I mean, I am foolish, but I'm saying, I wouldn't sin. The Gemara says, "Ein adam chotei v'lo lo." Person doesn't sin if there's not a benefit. Of course, there's a benefit. Of course, there's a benefit. But once again, am I doing my cost-benefit analysis? There is sometimes ridiculous, overwhelming, such enjoyable benefit to sin. Sin is good. Now, don't take that out of context, right? But l'maisa, of course, there's incredible benefit to sin, but you got to measure it against the loss. What's the collateral damage? What's collateral damage? So, what's your cost-benefit analysis? And I will say this is incredible. So, the motion, this is fascinating. Al kain yomru hamoshlim. So, therefore, again, the moshlim, those who rule over their yetzer, what do they say? Ba'u chashbon. Let's do a chashbon. Let's do our cost-benefit analysis. What's the cost of the mitzvah versus the benefit? What is the benefit of the Avera versus the loss? And I will say it's a cause and effect. How do you become a Moshe? How do I become someone who rules over my yetzer? So the Gemara says, only if you engage in the analysis. When I think it through, because what the analysis does, what I will say is, for most of us, just to say, I need to stop sinning. Saying I'm going to stop sinning doesn't really work. Doesn't really work, right? Because, okay, I've said many times I'm going to stop sinning, I still do it. I need to work it through. Bo cheshbon. There needs to be a calculation. I need to sit down and really understand for myself why I should or why I shouldn't do this. And I was saying, it's just not simple, but it's this cost-benefit analysis, it's this cheshbon that allows me to become this Moshe. Incredible. Tibana b'tzidkeuni. So literally, again, will be built up and established. It's beautiful. Imata osekain tibana ba'olam hazeh v'tzidkeuni li'olam haba. This is absolutely beautiful. If I do this cheshbon, if I really engage in this calculation, this cost-benefit analysis, then I will be built up in this world and established in the world to come. The benefits of the cost-benefit analysis, and I will say, Chazal, right? Hakadosh Baruch Hu is very confident to encourage us to engage in the cost-benefit analysis. Why? Because the Ribono Shel Olam is absolutely assured about what the result is going to be. Right? It's never a suffix. It's never a suffix. In other words, the benefit of the mitzvah will always outweigh the costs, and the cost of the Avera will always outweigh the benefit. That's just the way that it is. And if you do that, you become a Moshel. And if I become a Moshel, then I'm built up in this world, and I establish my chelik in the world to come. What a Gemara. Ir Sichon. What is in the city of Sichon? Emesim Adam Atzmo Ki Ir Zeh Shemahalech Achar Sichanoah. The said this is beautiful, beautiful. If a person makes himself like an ear, the say ear is another name for a foal, a young donkey. So if a person makes himself like a little donkey that follows after Sichon, Siach, pleasant conversation, which means that if a person allows himself to be easily swayed by his Yetzer Hara, that as soon as the Yetzer Hara whispers in my ear, do this, the Rashbam says, Ki ir zeh shemispata b'Yisroel u'b'divrei apikoros ve'eno Moshe b'Yisroel. If I allow myself to be enticed, and I allow myself to be swayed by the whisper of the Yetzer Hara every single time, right? And I never put up a fight, I just follow along with it. Maksiv acharov ki eitz yatsa mechashbon. What does it say afterwards? A fire will come out of cheshbon. Teitze eish mimachshavin v'tochal eshe'ina machshavin. So we'll say, what'll happen? So a fire will come from those who think, from the moshlim, and will burn those who don't think, being the moshlim. I will say, now what is that a reference to? It's actually quite beautiful. The Maharsha comments on this. Sorry, the Rashbam comments on this. He says, Teitzeh ish min ha-machshavim ha-tzadikim v'tochal she'en ha-machshavim k'taminu ha-perikin kol echa ve'echa nichva michul pasuk shel chavero. Because remember, we had this just a few days ago, that in the Messianic era, everyone's going to have a chuppah. I will say, but what is the chuppah going to be made out of? What is it going to be made out of? It depends. It depends. First of all, what it's going to be made out of depends, and how many chuppahs, so to speak, you're going to have, depend on your life. So I'll say, so what happens? So if I allow myself to go ahead and be easily enticed by the Yetzer Hara, what's going to happen? Literally, the fire of the Moshlim will come and consume those who are not Moshlim. Those who are just follow after the Siach, follow after the Yetzer Hara. What does that mean? That whether it's Moshiach or Olam Haba, whatever it is, I'm going to see my friends, right? And I'm going to see the beautiful chuppahs that they establish for themselves, and I'm going to be so terribly embarrassed that I couldn't get my act together in this world and wasn't able to produce for myself a beautiful chuppah as well. That's what it means when it says that the fire of others will come and consume those who follow after their Yetzer Hara. So profound. Mikiryas sichon, mikiryas tzadikim shenikru sichen. So literally again from the city of the tzadikim that are called trees. Achla ar Moav, consumed our Moav. What does that refer to? We'll say this is beautiful. Zeha mahalich achar Yisroel ki'ir zeh shemahalich achar sichanoah. This refers to someone who follows his Yetzer Hara, right? Just like the foal, just like the young donkey follows nice conversation. I will say it's so profound. It's almost as if a person you have a choice. You have a choice. Do you want to go ahead and be a Moshe or a donkey? That's it. That's the choice. Donkey or Moshe. Now, it sounds so strange. That really, feels like there should be something in between over there, right? But Lamaisa, there's not. There's not. Either I control the Yetzer Hara, or I follow it. If I control it, then I'm the Moshe, I'm the ruler. And if I follow it, then I'm a donkey. Those are the options, right? That's what's on the spiritual menu. And I have to choose which category I want to be in. So the Gemara goes weiter. The Gemara says, Balei Balos are known. What does it refer to when it says Balei Balos are known? Elu Gase Haruach. This refers to arrogant people. Damar Mar, Kol Adam Sheyesh Bal Gasas Haruach Nofel Begehenim. Any person who's arrogant ultimately goes to Gehenim. V'niram, we'll say, it's always interesting, by the way, of the Lashon of Nofel Begehenim, that any person who goes in is arrogant falls into Gehenim. So remember again, we'll say, you can have Gehenim, you don't have to wait to die to have Gehenim. People often experience Gehenim in this world. And the truth is, when a person is arrogant and totally oblivious to whatever their shortcomings or faults may be, they end up making terrible mistakes. And those mistakes could often land them in a Gehenim that is in Olam Hazeh. That could also be that lashon of Nofel Begehenim. That again, I'm in this world, my arrogance blinds me to so many things. As a result, I make some catastrophic mistakes that ultimately land me in Gehenna in this world. Avad cheshbono shel olam. So we'll say, so the person who is arrogant, ultimately chas v'shalom, thinks that there's no God and there's no cheshbon, right? There's no din, there's no judgment. So the word is ad dibon, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, hamtein ad sheyavo din v'nasim. Ad sheyavo din. Wait. So the arrogant person thinks that there's no God, that there's no judgment. Just okay, just wait. He'll see after he dies that there is in fact judgment. V'nasim ad nafach, top of Ayin Test 79a, ad shetavo eish she'ena tzrifa nifuach. He will see, the arrogant person will see that there is judgment when he comes into the fires that don't need to be fanned. Which are the fires that don't need to be fanned? A reference to Gehenna. Second line, 79a. Ad meidva, ad shetadiv nishmasan. So ultimately, what does it mean, ad meidva? Ad meidva, until the neshama is in pain. Va'amri la, ad da'avid mai deboi. Ultimately, again, until HaKadosh Baruch Hu does to the Rishon, ultimately, again, what is necessary. So we'll say, that's the beautiful drasha with this particular pasuk. And what a profound musar. Be a Moshe or be a donkey. That's it. Those are the options in life. And the Gemara is giving us a profound strategy. And I will say, sometimes we're faced with the temptation to sin. So there's two things. So we're faced with the temptation to sin. And the Gemara gives us strategy. What should you do? I'm struggling with an avera, which happens every day. What should I do? The Gemara says, take out like your proverbial ledger, right, and start doing pros and cons, cost-benefit analysis. Now, two things happen when you engage in the cost-benefit analysis, right? Number one, just logically, you begin to see the benefit of the mitzvah always outweighs the cost, and the collateral cost of the avera always outweighs the benefit. That's number one. There's something else that happens. Generally, when you take the time to do the cheshbon, by the time you finish doing the cheshbon, what has also happened? The fires of passion have cooled down a little bit. And I will say sometimes the greatest strategy, Rabbi Nachman writes about this, that sometimes the greatest strategy in the avoidance of sin is count to 10. Count to 10. Person, I say, I'm going to do the avera. I'm going to do it. I am going to do this. And I'm going to do it well. But you know what? I'm going to do it in 10 seconds. So the Rebbe suggests sometimes it's incredible to see that if I just give myself, right, I'm going to do it. Don't tell yourself you're not going to do it, because if you say you're not going to do it, you're going to lose that battle. But if you tell yourself, I'm going to do it in 10 seconds from now, the Rebbe suggests that often that just little bit of time of abstinence allows me to just like cool down a little bit. And suddenly again, I don't need to do the avera. So the cheshbon that the Gemara is describing over here really serves, I think, a twofold purpose. Number one is that the cost-benefit analysis itself is a powerful tool because you emerge with an important truth about averas and mitzvos. And it's also an excellent stalling mechanism. And the Rebbe says sometimes all you need are just those couple of moments of buffer in order to kind of get back control over yourself and avoid making life mistakes. Incredible. Whoever, again, separates himself from Divrei Torah, literally, again, fires consume him. So we'll say, so you could go ahead and read this pasuk as a punishment that a person who separates himself from Torah, so fires Gehenna, fires consume him. So we'll say, perhaps, Shneimar, v'nasati es panai bahem, meha-eish yatzu va-eish tochle. So we'll say, it's also very possible that it's not a punishment, it's a cause and effect. It's a cause and effect. Eish, fire, doesn't have to be the fires of Gehenna. Fire could also be, again, the fire of desire. And what the Gemara is talking about over here is, if I don't have Torah, I have absolutely no tools in my arsenal to fight against desire in this world. And we know this from our own lives. We'll say, the stronger I am in my spirituality, the more equipped I am to face the challenges and the wants and desires of life. Again, it doesn't mean they go away. Remember, again, we have another concept. What's our other concept? That the bigger the tzaddik, the bigger the Yetzer Hara. So there is this fascinating idea that the holier I get, the more intense my personal struggles are. Yet at that same time, the holier I am, the more tools I have in my personal toolbox to be able to fight against the Yetzer Hara. But if I don't have Torah, if I don't have a strong spiritual identity, if I am not embedded in a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like you said about Reb Tzaddik, if I'm not, so to speak, making brachas and bringing HaKadosh Baruch Hu into my life, I don't have the tools to fight the Yetzer Hara. I say, I just want to point this out. You see this, right? You see this in greater society. You see this, that the more society pushes to pull God out of the fabric of day-to-day life, the more the immorality and the more all of the craziness seeps in. This is not a Jewish thing. This is a humanity thing. The Ribono Shel Olam and his presence is the great stabilizer, the moral stabilizer for humanity. Remove God and all types of fires come in. We're living through this. This is what we see. Remove the Ribono Shel Olam, remove the 10 Commandments, remove the semblance of just basic religiosity, and all kinds of things happen. So it's not a punishment. It's a cause and effect. The Gemara goes on. Rav Dimi came along. He said, I'm Rabbi Yonasan. Kala porish atzmo v'divrei Torah, nofel v'gehenim. So Rabbi Yonasan says, whoever separates himself from divrei Torah ultimately falls into Gehenna. Now, I will say, at first glance, right, this is very strange. Why is this very strange? Sounds like the same statement. Okay, he uses Gehenna instead of Eish. So if you look, I'm assuming everyone has it. If you look, there's like a little aleph over there by Atzmo. So I goes with Tziyudim changes this to Tzarech Lomar Kol HaMerapeh. Now I will say, Merapeh means what? Weakens. See, watch this. Rabbi Huda is saying Kol HaPorish. Rabbi Yehuda says, if you go ahead and you separate yourself, right? Literally again, separate yourself. Parish means I pull myself out. If I pull myself away from Torah, I have no tools to defend myself against the wants, the desires, the proclivities that seek to derail me. I'm a train wreck. I'm literally going to be a train wreck. Comes along Rabbi Yonasan says, by the way, it's not just if you're Porish. Even if you weaken your connection. Wow. Porish means I'm totally pulling out. Merapa means at the end of the day, I weaken my connection. I weaken my connection. To be honest, it's not just if you're Porish. Let's say, we know this. The way Ruchnius works is if I'm not building it and bolstering it every single day, then I leave myself susceptible to the wants, the desires, the lusts, the proclivities, all the things that derail me. It's not just enough to be embedded, but I have to make sure that I'm strengthening that bond to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that bond to my Ruchnius, every single day. Because we know this. Just to be honest, I'll say, again, we're amongst friends. What happens when you miss a day shir? What happens when you miss a day shir? Don't raise your hand and scream out, because I know. Right? We all know. What happens when you miss a day shir? Your day's not the same. You miss a day of davening tefillah b'tzibur. It's not the same. It's not. Okay, you can make up the information. Okay, there's a podcast, there's a million different shiur. There's no problem with getting the Torah. There's no problem with that. We always speak about this. What we do every morning is not simply learn. You can learn anywhere, anytime, certainly at more convenient times. What it means to be koveya itim laTorah, to set aside time to learn, means I'm actively strengthening a bond. It's not just about getting information. You can get the information anytime, listen to it at whatever speed you want, do whatever else you're doing while you're also listening to that information. And fantastic. Great, so you've gotten the information, but you haven't necessarily strengthened the bond. This is the part that sometimes we miss a little bit. Talmud Torah, being kovei itim laTorah, is learning, yes, but more importantly, strengthening the bond to the Ribono Shalom. And the stronger that bond is, the more prepared I am to face the challenges. Miss your kviyas, if you know whatever. Okay, I'm still learning some information, but I miss my kviyas, I miss my established thing. The bond is not as strong. Bond is not. We know it. We know it from our own lives. If I miss it, there's something that's different. You know what that's called? That's called the bond is not as strong. That's what you feel. That's what I feel when I don't get what it is that is part of my daily life. The bond is not as strong. And we know what happens when the bond is not as strong. The day is different. I'm different. My approach is different. My strength, right? My walls are different. Everything is different. It's incredible. It's the goal in life, I will say, is that if we could just embed ourselves and strengthen that bond, be a Moshe, don't be a donkey, don't separate yourself, right? Don't even allow the bond to weaken. If I could keep that bond strong, it doesn't mean I'm not going to commit averos. I'm a human being. But at least in Eretz Hashem, I have the tools in my spiritual toolbox to be successful. Let's go back to it. The Gemara goes on. Shneimar Adam Toa Midarach Haskel Bekal Refaim Yaniach. Ve'ein Refaim Ala Gehenim Shneimar V'lo Yedek Refaim Shama Am Keishal Korea. Fine. Let's say back to the Gemara. Macher Ashba, Macher Zavla. Let's say so. What happens if you sell? Ashba is literally a garbage dump, but in this case, it's really like a composting field. Right? So let's say if I sell the ashpa, I also sell the manure inside. Tanan Hasam. So we'll say very interesting Gemara over here. Tanan Hasam. Kol haroy lemizbeach lo lebedek habayis. Lebedek habayis lo lemizbeach. Lo lemizbeach lo lebedek habayis. We'll say there are three different levels of hegdish. Right? Three different levels of hegdish. Right? Items that are hegdish and are usable for the mizbeach, for the altar. Right? Paradigmatic example of that, or not examples of that are animals, wine, flour. Animals, wine, flour. Those are items that are fit for the mizbeach. Next are items that are fit for bedek habayis. Right? Bedek habayis are things for the upkeep of the Beis Hamikdash. And then the third category are things that are not really fit for the mizbeach and not really fit for bedek habayis. A good example of that would be food. Food. Actually, the Rashbam points this out, all of this over here. He says, if you take a look, he says, Kol haroy lemizbeach v'lo lebedek habayis. It's right across from Tosfos ve'ein mo'alin b'masha b'sochel. So Tosfos says, Kigon shor v'kesev ve'eis timimim. So again, obviously the items that are fit for the mizbeach, but not for bedek habayis. That's talking about like animals, flour, good. Habayis for the bedek habayis v'lo lemizbeach. You go zav v'kesev. What's an example of items for bedek habayis? That's gold, silver, precious stones that literally could be used for the actual Beis HaMikdash, for the building of the Beis HaMikdash. And then there's the third category of things that are not fit for the Mizbeach and ultimately not really usable for Bedek HaBayis. And the Rashbam breaks down, he says, that's for example, I donate milk, or I donate cheese. Food, essentially food. Food is not fit for the Mizbeach. You can't really use it for the actual physical upkeep of the Beis HaMikdash. So these are items he gives to the Beis HaMikdash. The Beis HaMikdash sells it and uses the money for something consecrated. Okay, so now let's go. Tanan Hasam. Kol haroy lemizbeach v'lo lebedek habayis. Any item that is fit for the mizbeach but not for bedek habayis. Lebedek habayis v'lo lemizbeach, or is for bedek habayis and not for the mizbeach. Or lo lemizbeach v'lo lebedek habayis, or items again that are not for the mizbeach and not for bedek habayis. In all of these cases, ma'alin bahen or b'mat shebesochan. We'll say if they are consecrated, you violate. If you commit me'ila, remember again, me'ila means illegal, mundane usage of consecrated property. So you commit me'ila if you use any of these items or that which is inside of them. So the Gemara says, what is that? Ketzad. Here we go. Hikdish bar malea mayim, if I makdish a pit, and the pit is filled with water, right? Ashpos, maleos, zevel, or I go ahead and I makdish an ashpa, a garbage dump, a composting dump, right? And inside of it is manure. Shovach malayonim, or a dovecote filled with doves. Sodeh male asavim, or a field filled with grass or with herbs. Ilan nasoi peros, or a tree that is filled with fruit. The halach is about so in any of these cases, if I makdish any of these items, so the item inside of it also becomes hektish. So I makdish the bar, the water also becomes hektish. The shovach, the dovecote, the doves also become hektish. So you commit me'ila both with the item and that which is quote unquote inside of it. Aval, now this is all presupposing that what? This is all presupposing that at the time that you were makdish the bar, the water was inside of it. The doves were inside of the dovecote, right? Or we'll call it the item inside was in the exterior item, so to speak, at the time that the exterior item was consecrated. Aval, but if I consecrated a pit and the water was only added in afterwards, ashpa or I consecrated the ashpa and the manure was added afterwards, shovach or a dovecote and the doves came afterwards, I consecrated a tree and the fruit only grew afterwards. I consecrated the field and the vegetation only grew afterwards. They both say in all of these cases, Molin Bahen, the Ein Molin B'masha B'sochon de Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda says, then Me'ila only is on the original item and not on the item that subsequently, quote unquote, grew in it. So both say, incredibly important, right? So this is the position of Rabbi Yehuda. So if you go ahead and you consecrate the item, right, and the other piece of it is already present at the time of the hektish. So I consecrated a bar. The water was already in it. I consecrated an ashpa. The zevel was already in it. Everything is hektish. But if for argument's sake I consecrated the bar and the water was only introduced later, ashpa, the zevel was only introduced later, then the bar and the ashbark are hektish, but the items inside are not. That's Rabbi Yehuda. Good. Rabbi Yossi says, nope. Hamakdish as asad ve'asailan molan b'hana v'giduleyan mipnei shehein gidulei hekdish. Rabbi Yossi says, no, not true. The halacha is, even if you were first makdish, the items and then the interior items came afterwards. Rabbi Yossi says, still, everything is hekdish. Why? Because they're all considered to be things that grow from hekdish. That's the idea over here. So the water, so to speak, is viewed as growing from the pit. The zevel is viewed as growing from the ashpa. The yonim, right, the doves grow from the dovecote. The trees grow, the fruit literally do grow from the trees. And therefore all of these things are considered to be hekdish derivatives. And the halach of hekdish derivatives is they're also hekdish. Beautiful. Amar Rabbi. Rabbi says as follows. Here we go. So Rabbi wants to splice this. Isn't that actually very interesting? Rabbi wants to say, I think that we follow Rabbi Yehuda by a bar and a shovach. Meaning what? Now let's say if you have a pit with water. So I think we pass on Rabbi Yehuda, which means if the water was in the pit at the time that the bar was made hegdish, then the water is hegdish also. But if the water came later on, the water is not hegdish. But yet we paskin like Rabbi Yossi. We should pass like Rabbi Yossi, ultimately again by a sada and an ilan, by a field and by a tree. Now I will say, what's the difference between the bar ashpa cases versus the sada ilan cases? What's the difference? It's a clear difference. By the sada and the ilan, right, the herbs and the fruit are literally growing from the hegdish item. So I understand why we would say those items, even though they weren't present at the initial consecration, should be hegdish. Why? Because they're literally growing from hegdish. They're receiving their sustenance from hegdish. Contrast that with the water and the manure, right? The water and the manure were just simply placed there in the pit, right? Or in the garbage dump after the pit or the dump became hegdish, right? So therefore, you're going to both say, they don't have to be hegdish. They weren't part of the original consecration. Therefore, there's no reason to assume that they should be hegdish. So Rabbi wants to make this interesting distinction that will follow Rabbi Yehuda in the case of bar. In the case of bar and shovach, davkot, and will follow ultimately again Rabbi Yossi in the case of the sada and the ilan. So the Gemara says, "Hi, Mas, let's analyze this." So Bishlam near the Rabbi Yehuda bar v'shovach. So I understand when Rabbi says that we should follow the position of Rabbi Yehuda in the case of the bar and the shovach. Right, we should say that Rabbi Yehuda, namely that halacha l'maisa, if the water was not in the pit at the time of consecration, but only introduced later, so the pit is consecrated, the water is not. If the doves were not in the dove coat at the time of consecration, but introduced later, the dove coat is hektish, the doves are not. So I understand that. I understand when he says, Nir and Rabbi Yehuda bebar v'shovach, Michlal de palig asada ve'ilan. Because we can infer from that Rabbi Yehuda would argue on the case of sada and ilan. Ella nirin divrei Rabbi Yossi besada ve'ilan. Both the second of the wide lines. But when we say that, we should see the position of Rabbi Yossi by the case of sada ve'ilan. The right that will hold like Rabbi Yossi ultimately again in the case of the tree and the fruit, which means that what? That even if I initially consecrated a barren field or a barren tree, and then fruit subsequently grows, that will say that fruit will become hekdish as well. So the Gemara says, Michlal de palig bebar v'shovach. Ultimately, again, so we can infer from that he argues, that Rabbi Yossi argues in the case of bar and shovach, v'ha Rabbi Yossi sada ve'ilan kama. Rabbi Yossi is not commenting on bar v'shovach. Rabbi Yossi is only commenting on the case of sada and ilan. Maybe you say that Rabbi Yossi is addressing his comments in accordance with the words of Rabbi Yehuda. V'atan yom Rabbi Yossi. Ein ani roa divrei shel Rabbi Yehuda b'sada ve'ilan mipnei shen gidulei hegdish. So I'll say, but yet Rabbi Yossi is explicitly on record as saying, remember, Rabbi Yossi himself is only addressing sada and ilan. That's all he's addressing. And Rabbi Yossi himself says, I do not agree with Rabbi Yehuda in the case of sada and ilan. Why? Because again, Rabbi Yossi's whole logic is, even if you're just makdish the tree without the fruit, when the fruit subsequently grows on the tree, that fruit is being yonik. It's deriving its sustenance, and it's literally growing from hagdish. So the Gemara said, "Besada the ilan hu de'ena roa." So it's only in the case of sada and ilan that Rabbi Yossi disagrees with Rabbi Yehuda. Ha bar v'shovach roa. But bepashtos, Rabbi Yossi would agree with Rabbi Yehuda in the case of the bar and the shovach. In other words, that even Rabbi Yossi agrees, I will say, that if I'm makdish a bar, I'm makdish an empty bar, and then I introduce water later on, then what should be the status of the water? Not hektish, right? Why? It makes sense because the water, technically speaking, is a separate entity than the pit. So, in other words, the status of the water need not follow the status of the pit. And it seems like even Rabbi Yossi agrees with that. Bless you. That's what it means to say. So this is what Rabbi really meant to say. Nirin divrei Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, bebar v'shovach. Listen to this. That ultimately the words of Rabbi Yehuda appear to be correct to even Rabbi Yossi in the case of bar v'shovach. They're both saying, what it sounds like according to Rabbi is like this. In the case of bar and shovach, everyone is going to agree to the following case. If you're makdish a pit, we're just going to go with bar. If you're makdish a pit that is filled with water, then what's halacha? What's hagdish? What's hagdish? What's hagdish? Everything, right? Because you're makdish a bar with water. If you're makdish a bar without water, and you introduce water later on, what's hagdish? The bar, and not the water. And everyone's going to agree with that. Everyone's going to agree with that, right? The Gemara says, so even near and different Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, even Rabbi Yossi will agree with that. Rabbi Yossi lo nechlak, shaf Rabbi Yossi lo nechlak, alav ela besada ve'ilan, aval bebar v'shovach modile. Because only cases Rabbi Yossi argues in Rabbi Yehuda is the case of the field and the tree. See, you will say, in the case of the field and the tree, let's just take the tree. A makdish a tree, an apple tree, right? But there are no apples on it, right? Then apples grow on the tree. So Rabbi Yehuda holds that Allah Chalamaisa, the apples are not hekdesh, only the tree. Rabbi Yossi says, no. The apples are hekdesh. Even though the apples were not there at the time that I consecrated the tree, since literally the apples grow from the tree, the apples have a hekdesh status. But it's only in that case that Rabbi Yossi disagrees with Rabbi Yehuda, but in the case of the bar and the shovach, he will agree with Rabbi Yehuda. Incredible. So Tana Rabbanan. So we'll say, let's go right there. So Tana Rabbanan. Hikdishan rikanin v'achar kach nismalu. If I was makdish, ultimately again, now it's not clear exactly what this is referring to. Which case is this? But so we'll just translate it now. I was makdish the item when it was empty, and subsequently it filled up. So we'll say, what's the halacha? I commit mi'ilah with the item itself, but not with anything that subsequently filled it up. Rabbi Lazer says, no, you could even commit mi'ilah even with that which subsequently filled up the item. So what is this? Amar Rabba, machlokes besada ve'ilan. It's machlokes by sada and ilan, by field and trees. Why? Tanakama savar like Rabbi Yehuda. Tanakama holds like Rabbi Yehuda. I will say Rabbi Yehuda always holds. Rabbi Yehuda's position is as follows. When you're makdish an item, the only thing that is hekdish is the item that you are being makdish at the time that you're being makdish it. That's it. Anything subsequently that grows, that fills in, Rabbi Yehuda holds is not hekdish. So it must be ultimately, again, Tanakam holds like Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Lazer, Rabbi Shimon holds like Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi is of the opinion that at least by a sada and ilan, anything that grows from the field or the tree that was hekdish, itself becomes hekdish, even though it was not present at the time of the hekdish declaration itself. Aval, the bar v'shovach tivrei hakol molin bahen vein molin b'masha v'sochan. So we'll say, it sounds like the Gemara is going ahead and reaching an interesting conclusion over here, which is, let's start with what we agree with. Everyone will agree that if you're makdish an empty pit, or you're makdish an empty dovecote, and then subsequently water comes into the pit, doves come into the dovecote, everyone is going to agree that what? That the pit and the dovecote are hekdish, and the water and the doves are not hekdish. That's something that everyone's going to agree on. What's the machlokes case? I was makdish a field or a tree, and the field or a tree had no vegetation. Then subsequently vegetation grew, so now what's the halacha? Rabbi Yehuda will say, just the tree and the field are hekdish, any vegetation and fruits are not. And Rabbi Yossi will say, no, the vegetation and the fruits are hekdish, since they grew, since they're hektish derivatives, they're hektish as well. That is our point of contention. Incredible. Let's go weiter. So the Gemara says, Amalei Abaye, ve'elahad disanya, but Abaye says, what do you do with the following brisa? Hekdishan molin bahan, or masha b'sochan. If you are makdish the item when it was full, so ultimately you commit mi'ilah with the item and that which is inside of it. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, machlif. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, he goes ahead and so we'll say he changed his position. So the Gemara says, "V'i b'sada v'ilan amay machlif." Now we'll say, if we're talking about over here a sada and a ilan, so then why does he have to change his position? And we'll say 79b. Amar Rabba Malkie we go. Machlokes bebar b'shovach. The machlokes ultimately again is in the case of a bar and the shovach. Aval. So we'll say, so now, so look what Rabba just did. Rabba just totally did a 180 over here. Absolutely completely flipped this. So the machlokes is by a bar and the shovach. In other words, that's the machlokes Rabbi Yossi. Aval b'sada v'ilan divrei hakol molin b'hainu masha v'sochan. When it comes to sada and ilan, everyone agrees that Allah Chalamaisa, you commit mi'ilah with the original object and even any subsequent item that grows, even if it was not there at the time of the hekdish. So we'll say, so now again, so this is a total 180 from what we were saying before. Up until now, we were assuming that everyone agreed in the case of the bar and shovach. And the argument case, the machlokes case, was in the case of sada ve'ilan. Now the Gemara is reversing it and saying, no, the sada ve'ilan case is the case where everyone agrees that halacha l'maisa right? Even if you were makdish, a barren sod, a barren tree, and items subsequently grew, those growths are hekdish. What's the machlokas? The machlokas is in the bar and the shovach case. I was makdish an empty bar, then later water was introduced. I was makdish an empty dovecote, and then later doves came in. So Rabbi Huda will say the water and the doves are not hekdish. Rabbi Yossi will say that they are. That they are. The Gemara says, okay. Ubebar v'shovach breikanim my pligi. So let's analyze this. Ubemalei my pligi. So the Gemara says, so what's the machlokes over here, right? Let's talk about this in just a moment. So what is the machlokes case? When we talk about, again, if they're arguing in the case of an empty bar and an empty dovecote, what are they arguing about? And in the case of a full bar and dovecote, what are they arguing about? Here we go. Breikanim pligi b'plukti d'ramei v'rabanan. We'll say, if we're talking about a case of being makdish, an empty bar, an empty pit, or an empty dovecote, and then again, subsequently, water comes into the pit, doves come into the dovecote, what's the machlokes? Here we go. It's the machlokes Rameir and the Rabbanan. Tanakam Savalok Rabbanan, Da Amri Ein Adam Makne Davar Shelo Bali Olam. Shemo says, listen to this. The Rabbanan hold that in general, ultimately, again, a person cannot be makne Adavar Shabbat, which means you can't be makdish, which literally means you can't convey ownership of something that does not yet exist. Does not yet exist. So therefore the Rabbanan ultimately hold that the water in the pit, right, or for that matter again, the doves in the dovecote are a Davar Shalom Aliyom. It doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. So because it doesn't yet exist at the time of the hektish, therefore what? It can't become hektish subsequently. Rabbi Lazer Volla. On the other hand, Rabbi Lazer holds like Rabbi Meir, who holds that no, a person can be makne davar shalom. You can convey ownership of something that does not yet exist in the world, and therefore, again, I will say what? Even when the water subsequently comes into the pit, or the doves subsequently come into the dovecote, you can be makne that. You could go ahead and literally again give that over to hektish. So Rosh says, 1 second, let's talk about this. And I will say, we've seen this many times before. And I will say, this is a very important qualification because I understand the position that says, you can't convey something that doesn't exist, which makes sense. You can't engage in a transaction with something that is not real. If it doesn't exist, it's not real. But what's the pshat that you can engage in a transaction with something that does not yet exist? What's the pshat with that? So I will say, the Gemara gives a very important qualification. When do we say Adam makne davar shelo bali ola? When do we say that you can convey ownership of something that doesn't exist? Amar, here we go. The Shams Leila bimheira kigon peros dekel da'avidi da'asu. I would say, even if you accept the premise of Adam makne davar shelo bali ola, that you could convey ownership of something that doesn't yet exist, it's true, but it has to be something that may not actually exist, but we know that's what? We know it's coming. For example, right? I could convey ownership of dates from a date palm. Why? Because I know the dates are coming. I know they're coming. In other words, that obviously could there be some type of wipes out the date palms? Of course. But I know that in the natural order of things, I know that the dates are coming. So because I know that they're coming, I can convey ownership. So I want to be clear. One opinion says, no, you can't do anything with the dates because the dates don't exist. You can't engage in transactional law, or you can't engage in a transaction with something that does not physically exist. But yet there's another opinion that says, yes, you can. But even that opinion that says, yes, you can only do that with items that you know are going to come into existence. The Gemara says, Dovid Asi, honey, I will say, how do you apply that to the case of a pit with water? See, I know that the date palm is going to grow dates. I would say, how can you go ahead and be makdish water which doesn't exist in a pit? Maybe the water will come, maybe the water won't come. In other words, there's no guarantee. In other words, dates are naturally part of a date palm. So therefore, again, there's an opinion that says you could transact something with those future dates because I know that trees grow dates. Pits don't grow water. So because pits don't grow water, how can we say that any future water that comes in is automatically hektish? Okay, we have to be talking about a case where this is actually very interesting. We have to do it in the following case. I'm being makdish my bar, right? That's the case of here. I'm being makdish my bar. So it must be that we're talking about a bar where this bar is in my field, or next to my field, right? And I have water in my field that I'm actively channeling to the bar. So I am controlling the process. So I know ultimately, again, that there's a pool of water in my field, and I'm going to be actively channeling that water to the bar. So because I control the water, therefore again, according to the opinion that says that you could be makne a davar shalom bali olam, because I control the water, it becomes like the date palms. Just like the dates are going to grow on the palm tree, so too I could say the water is going to come into the pit. Same idea with the doves, right? This dove coat that I'm being makdish, I have another dove coat. Right, and that dove coat has doves, and this new dove coat is right in the line of the journey of my old dove coat. So I know that the doves from dove coat A are going to go to dove coat B. Beautiful. Over Malay and Malkie. So we'll say, so that's what they argue about. So that's what the machlokes is when it comes to an empty pit. Right? When it comes to an empty pit, so the machlokes is, can you be makdish a davar shalom bali olam? Can you constantly say it doesn't yet exist? One opinion says yes, one opinion says no. So the opinion that says no, okay, therefore again, when the water is subsequently introduced into the pit, even though the pit is hagdish, the water will not be hagdish. The other opinion says that Allah Chalamais again, you can be makdish a davar shalom b'olam. You can even be makdish something that doesn't yet exist. And the case is going to have to be what? The case will have to be a situation where Allah Chalamais, I control the water flow from the other field into this pit. Fine. We'll say in the case of the full pit or the full dove coat, what are they arguing about? Amarava kigon shehekdish bar stam. So this is interesting. I'll say in this case the machlokas will be as follows. What if I have a pit filled with water? I do have a pit filled with water, and I go ahead and I'm makdish a bar. That's what I do. I say I'm being makdish my bar. Shabbos says, so what's the shayla? Does that include the water or not? Rabbi Lazer Silber, Kavod, Amar Danin Din Gavoa Mi Din Hedyot. So said this is very interesting. So Rabbi Lazer holds like his father, and he holds that in general we learn like the halachos of Hagdish from the halachos of Din Hedyot, regular transactional law. Ma Din Hedyot Matzi Amar Bira Zavini Lecha Milo Zavini Lecha. When it comes to regular transactional law, if I sell Ruven a pit, I can make the argument I sold you a pit, but I didn't sell you the water. Af din gavoa bira aktish maya lo aktish. So to again, halocha l'maisa, when it comes to makdish a pit, I can say I makdish the pit, not makdish the mortar. The Tanakama savra in donin din gavoa midin hedyot. The Tanakama ultimately again says, but we don't learn out the laws of hagdish from the laws of regular transaction. The Gemara says, 1 second. The din hedyot law, is that true? That regular transactional law, when I sell a pit, it doesn't include the water? Vatznan, we learned, machar bar, machar meimar. What says Mishnah? If you sell a pit and the pit is filled with water, the sale of the pit includes the sale of water. Amarava, masnisin yichidahi. The truth is, our Mishnah reflects a singular opinion. The Sanya, machar bar, lo machar meimav. That if you sell a pit, you don't sell the water. Rabbi Nassan Omer machar bar, machar meimav. So interestingly enough, it seems to be that the majority opinion is that when you sell a pit, you don't sell the water. So therefore, again, the machlokes over here in a full pit is, if you just say, I'm being makdish my pit, does being makdish my pit include the water or not include the water? That's the machlokes. So both say, we'll have to stop it for today. Admit it, you did not think we were going to finish, right? The pace we're going to Amar Aleph. It's okay, I saw it in your eyes. So again, tomorrow we'll just finish off because we did not do the halacha l'maisa. So we have to see halacha l'maisa, how do we paskin in this case? In the machlokes, Rabbi Huda and Rabbi Yossi. Ultimately, again, both by the Sad of the Elon and the Bar V'Shovach. We'll start with that Rambam tomorrow. Shkoyach.